Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Barakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure to the end. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson, and I'm going to start it off in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. And you have the spiritual demon Satan, which is the top left-handed angel of the Lord, who has, no free will of his own, contrary to popular belief with that whole fallen angel narrative. And then you've got his physical counterpart on the face of the earth, the Edomite, or these so-called white people out here, which, when you look at the way these Edomites move, they work in a very satanic manner, especially with their elites, such as Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, these banking and, other elite families. But I opened up the video with this verse to preface, two articles to show that very major things are coming down the pipeline, for you people in the United States of America. Life as you know it is about to change drastically. And I mean, you've got this whole Strait of Hormuz situation taking place, which a bunch of other countries outside of America are feeling the ramifications from. But, they're slowly starting to creep in, to America. And things are just going to continue to intensify as we get deeper and deeper into Jacob's trouble, a time like no other, as it says in Jeremiah 30, verse 7, and Daniel 12, verse 1, a time worse than any other point in human history you can think about, because it's the great time of judgment of Yahweh Bahashem Yahawashi on you people, for the great wickedness and pride you've been walking in. And the epicenter of pride and wickedness is America. But I'm going to go to my first article on endtimesheadlines.org, titled Cuba could use 300 military drones to attack U.S. base at Guantanamo Bay. According to a report from Axios, U.S. officials are closely monitoring Cuba's acquisition of more than 300 military drones and discussions within the island nation about potential strikes on American targets, including the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base, U.S. military vessels, and possibly Key West, Florida, just 90 miles north of Havana. But wait, I thought the U.S. was doing an embargo on Cuba to where they've run out of gasoline, to where they're having rolling blackouts and, power outages. But they're able to get, 300 military drones capable of striking targets in the United States of America. Again, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. And let's see who's been supplying them with these drones. Allegedly. Classified intelligence shared with the outlet highlights Cuba's expanding drone capabilities, sourced primarily from Russia and Iran since 2023. The usual suspects, which keep Iran, and Russia in mind for later in this lesson. The drones have been positioned at strategic sites across the island, raising alarms within the Trump administration amid deepening tensions and the presence of Iranian military advisors in Havana. A senior U.S. official described the proximity of the threat as particularly concerning. When we think about those types of technologies being that close, and a range of bad actors from TS groups to drug cartels to Iranians to the Russians, it's concerning, the official said. It's a growing threat. The developments come as CIA Director John Ratcliffe visited Cuba on Thursday, delivering a stern warning against any hostile actions and pressing officials to abandon the island's totalitarian system to ease punishing U.S. sanctions. Jump around a bit. Cuba has also sought further drones and equipment from Russia in recent weeks, according to the intelligence intercepts. U.S. officials note that thousands of Cuban soldiers have fought alongside Russian forces in Ukraine, gaining first-hand experience with drone tactics. Cuban officials have defended their right to self-defense. In a statement, the embassy said, like any country, Cuba has the right to defend itself against external aggression. It is called self-defense, and it is protected by international law and the UN Charter. And that sounds all fine and dandy, but lest we forget, on the Economist cover for 2026, you had cargo ships with missiles, firing out of them. And we know that the Trump administration is heavily pushing for the American Technate, which when you look at the map he posted on his Twitter, you had America covered by the American flag, I believe parts of Canada, Greenland, Mexico, Cuba, all the way down to Venezuela. And look at how America has moved against some particular countries like Venezuela, and the threats they made to countries like Greenland and, Cuba. The U.S. is looking to take Cuba. So like with everything, there's always the boogeyman, the narrative put in place for Esau to justify, coming to bring democracy and freedom and safety and security. Really, it's just for these elites who really run America to consolidate more power. And they have no qualms with putting down American citizens to get their, agenda pushed through. Lest we forget what happened back in 2001 on 911. But now I'm going to go to some precepts. The first one, Revelation chapter 12, verse 12. Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe or destruction to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the devil or deceiver, Esau Edom, specifically the elites, is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And remember, they have their 2030 agenda, where they want to have their digital infrastructure with the majority of people with the micro C-hip implant in them done by 2030. Unless we forget what K. Schwab of the W to the E to the F said a couple of years ago. We're coming into the times of the poly crisis. We're coming into the times of an angrier world. And another thing he mentioned during the poly crisis was what? A cyber pandemic. Which, keep that in mind. This is Revelation chapter 6. I'm going to read verses 7 to 8. And, this is dealing with the so-called 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which are just symbolic of things that would be taking place in the last days, which we're currently in. The 4th seal, death. And when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell, or the grave, followed with him. And when you go to Habakkuk chapter 2, around verses 4 to 5, when it talks about Esau and his characteristics, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, but gathereth unto himself all nations and peoples and tongues. What does that sound like? A one world order. It also said he is as death and hell and cannot be satisfied. And the devil is about to come down in great wrath and bring the pain. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth, creating that chaos to bring about the order, that new world order. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth to kill with the sword, drones, missiles, terrorist attacks, and with hunger. And we know we're hearing warning signs from what? Of the Strait of Hormuz situation, with talks of fertilizer shortages, food shortages, droughts and floodings and other adverse weather events coming from things like a super El Nino, and with death and with the beasts of the earth. And like I just said, remember, K. Schwab said we're coming into the time of the polycrisis, a angrier, more violent world, and also cyber, pandemics, which brings me to my second article from Politico.com. Iranian hackers, the usual suspects, are targeting U.S. energy and water sectors, federal agencies warn. So missile and drone attacks on the U.S. homeland and within the country, cyber attacks crippling critical infrastructure. Federal cyber and law enforcement agencies warned that Iran-linked hackers are exploiting programmable logic controllers to target U.S. energy, water, and government service sectors. Iranian hackers are exploiting cyber vulnerabilities in key software systems at U.S. water and energy providers, according to a new advisory released by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency on Tuesday. The guidance warns that Iran-linked hackers are targeting internet-connected programmable logic controllers. These are industrial computers used to control and run critical infrastructure networks across the nation. The advisory was jointly produced by the CISA, the National Security Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, U.S. Cyber Command, the Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Cyber National Mission Force. Programmable logic controllers developed by software manufacturers Rockwell Automation / Allen Bradley are actively being exploited, and PLCs from other companies are potentially being targeted as well, according to the advisory. The agencies advised all U.S. organizations to remove the control software from direct internet exposure and check available logs for suspicious traffic. If an organization uses Rockwell Automation devices, the agencies recommend contacting the company if the organization may have been targeted. The advisory does not specify which Iranian hacking group is behind the attacks, only noting that Iranian-affiliated advanced persistent threat actors were targeting U.S. critical infrastructure organizations with the intent to cause disruptive effects. The agencies noted that the attacks bear a resemblance to cyber attacks in 2023 carried out by the Iranian hacking group Cyber Avengers. The group, affiliated with Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, hacked into and defaced Israeli-made digital control panels at multiple U.S. water treatment facilities in Pennsylvania. And, a lot of these programs that these critical infrastructures use, are Israeli-made and have back doors for Israeli entities, including the Mossad, to get into. And, like I've been saying throughout the video, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. A lot of incidents out here that the U.S. finds themselves, responding to or getting involved in. The paper trail leads back, to the 1948ers. Look at the Gulf of Tonkin incident back in the 60s, which led to the U.S. getting involved in the Vietnam War. These incidents occurred shortly after the October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel by Hamas militants and after subsequent strikes by Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip. And another thing, I believe it was an Economist cover that came out before 2023, and it showed Bibi Milkowski, on a paraglider, and a Hamas militant on a paraglider, and they were both flying at each other, shooting at each other. Food for thought. The advisory noted that the attacks were likely due, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'll read. The advisory notes that the attacks were likely due to the ongoing U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, stating that Iranian-affiliated APT targeting campaigns against U.S. organizations have recently escalated, likely in response to hostilities. They said with this article, but again, threats of drone and missile strikes on the U.S. homeland, mightiest attacks, cyber attacks on water and energy and other critical infrastructures. That devil is getting ready to come down in great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time to fulfill his NWO. And in between here and there, a lot of bodies are about to hit the floor. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 6. I'm going to read verses 22 to 24. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. The fool's storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. Shortages out here, empty store shelves, which was one of the things we read back in Revelation chapter 6. And many shall be killed with the sword and with hunger. And not just food shortages, but shortages of many other things out here. Again, being tied back to that Strait of Hormuz situation. I just read an article from a brother saying that you can expect, motor oil shortages to come due to that situation. And the trumpet shall give a sound, which when every man heareth, they shall be suddenly afraid. And at that time shall friends fight one against another like enemies. Civil unrest, racial unrest out here, state of martial law. And what would be a major factor to cause that? Food shortages out here, critical, the lights going out, people in a panic, people being put in survival mode. And the earth shall stand in fear with those that dwell therein. Listen closely. The springs of the fountains shall stand still, and in 3 hours they shall not run. The water being cut off. As we just read in that article on Politico, these different intelligence agencies have found information on Iranian hackers allegedly, messing with critical water infrastructure and, critical electrical infrastructure. And, about a year or two ago, you had allegedly Chinese hackers attacking, critical water infrastructure as well. So you Americans are in for a very bad time. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. And like I've been saying throughout the video, this devil has no qualms with putting his own people down to get his agenda in place. This is Isaiah chapter 14. I'm going to read verses 4 to 5 and jump down. Thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. And this is speaking of Babylon the Great, one of the names for the United States of America in the scriptures. And, while those that control Babylon are ultimately the elites, who's their CEO, their face for this corporation, DJ Donald Trump. Thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Which this is very, poetic and spiritual that Babylon's called the golden city, because what's one thing Trump is obsessed with? Gold. The golden ballroom, those golden statues of him, and, the golden dome, missile defense system. Yahweh hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers, and the wicked, according to Job 9 verse 24, the wicked whom the earth has been given into the hands of, and the border of wickedness in Malachi 1 verse 4 are you Edomites. But now I'm going to jump down to verse 20, because when we read down, it's going into Esau being taken out of power and the whole earth rejoicing and finally being at peace because of your downfall. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land. And what's the main power structure, the main land of Esau? America. And we can see he has no problems destroying his land with what? These chemtrails, these pollutions being poured into these rivers and lakes by these factories. And hey, going back, to the waters not running in 2nd Esdras chapter 6 and 24, what's another major issue taking place? These AI data centers drinking tens of millions of gallons of water a day, leading to high energy bills, and some places facing running out of water. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land. and slain thy people. Like I've been saying throughout the video, this devil has no qualms with putting his own, people down. So how much more you other nations out here, especially you Israelites, or so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Now, while I've been, hearkening on the point that these elites are going to cause a lot of damage out here to bring about their, great reset, hey, they're going to be foreign actors as well in the midst, causing havoc in and around America. It's about to be a free-for-all that Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai is bringing to judge, this whore, Babylon, and Iran and Russia. Hey, they are going to be involved, as well as being blamed by the elites for the things they're bringing. But now I'm going to go to here. Jeremiah chapter 51. I'm going to start at verse 12. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. Babylon, the great America. Actually, I'll start at 11. Make bright the arrows. Gather the shields. And that's ultimately talking about those nuclear missiles that are going to be fired on America during World War III. Yahweh hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes. And that's speaking about the spiritual Medes, the Russians. For his device is against Babylon to destroy it. Destroy it, because it is the vengeance of Yahweh, the vengeance of his temple. So the Lord is going to use these Russians and, these other major nations to help in destroying America, along with, your own elites dismantling this country. But the thing is that, nations like Russia and China are going to make a full end of you. Verse 12, set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon, make the watch strong, set up the watchmen, prepare the ambushes. For Yahweh hath both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon, you American citizens. But as it said, prepare the ambushes, O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures. Because, America, even though it is declining, is still, the top, importing consumer nation on the face of the earth. That, all these different countries send their treasures or their goods to. Thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. Yahweh of hosts hath sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men, as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. And we know that during Biden's administration, he they called him Beijing Biden too. What did he do? He had open borders on the southern border and on the northern border, and you had tens of thousands of people from countries all across the world flooding across the borders. And when they did interviews with people, a lot of them were Iranian, Syrian, Chinese, Russian, Turkish, America's so-called perceived enemies. And I remember there was one guy, I believe he was Syrian. He said, if you don't know me, you're going to know me soon. And, the authorities got him and did a background check, and he was leaked to Teist groups. So while the powers that be are going to screw over their own people, you're going to have foreign actors as well as caterpillars preparing the ambushes for you Americans. Teist attacks on the streets, cyber attacks, all these things. But I'm going to close it out in 2nd Ezra chapter 15. I'm going to start at verse 28. Behold, an horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, so-called Middle East, Western Asia. And this is going into, the War of Armageddon, the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which you can also read about in Joel chapter 3, verse 29, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia, those Ishmaelites, Gulf state nations, what have you, shall come out with many chariots, their military assets, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth. that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Also the Carmanians, which, when you look up ancient Carmania, it's in modern-day Iran. So the Carmanians are speaking of the Iranians. Raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them. While you're seeing skirmishes here and there between these Iranians and these Arab states, there's eventually going to come a point to where they're going to ally themselves together against the state of Israel and America. And, we've also been hearing them saying, they're having grudges with America. Why? Because with that U.S.-Israeli war over there, the U.S. has been taking a lot of assets to defend them, to help defend those 1948ers, leaving them with their ass in the breeze out there. And with great power shall they come and join battle with them. Listen closely. And they shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. And, besides being known as Babylon the Great in the scriptures, in certain parts of prophecy, America is also known as spiritual Assyria. And, we have already seen instances of the Carmanians or the Iranians wasting portions of the land of the Assyrians with what? Them crippling all the U.S.'s military bases over in that region. But them wasting a portion of the land of the Assyrians can also go into them what? Touching the homeland with sleeper cell attacks, cyber attacks on energy and water, etc., etc. But that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time, Shalom.